So my original intention for this video was to do a comparison of these two magic school fantasy books, Arcana Academy by Elise Kova and A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I will still try to do that as much as I can, but I did not finish A Deadly Education, nor do I plan to. Why I'm choosing not to finish it, I will go over when I start talking about this one, but I think I would rather start with the one that I finished. This one is very new. It's only been out for a couple of months, and I found that I enjoyed reading it, but it also felt like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. If you were to ask me, what is this book about? My answer might be a little rambling or not very specific because of the types of subgenres of fantasy that it was trying to be. Magic school, romance, found family, political revolution, kind of. It never really fully slotted into one of those. It felt like kind of a mixed bag of all the ideas that Elise Kova had and just threw them all into one book. At first, I thought what I was getting was a mix of Harry Potter and Fourth Wing. So students going to magic school to learn whatever the local style of magic is, but at more of an adult level to add the element of romance and probably spice. Arcana Academy only takes people once they've hit their 20th birthday. So the youngest person attending is 20. It's only a 3-year school. So only full-grown adults attend. And then it's supposed to be like this deadly thing where a certain amount of students dying each year is just normal. And then students who don't pass the requirements get branded and sent to the mines or the mills or whatever they're called. So you either succeed and graduate and serve the crown, or you are severely punished for life. The political landscape is that the crown controls all the magic and all the magic users. Any use of magic by someone who's not been through Arcana Academy is strictly outlawed and strictly regulated. And the main character that we start with, Clara, told from first-person point of view, she has done magic illegally. And so she gets found out and arrested, and she's sitting in jail when we start the book. The magic system here is tarot card based, which I have not read a book based on card magic before. I don't know anything about tarot, so I don't know how accurate the use of it is here. But I do play Magic the Gathering, so using cards to cast magic does feel like a cool way to do it. And they have 3 main aspects of how they use the tarot. The first one is inking. It takes a certain amount of inborn magic to put your magical ability into the ink that you have to draw a certain way or it doesn't work. Then you have casting, which is, now that I have these cards, I use them magically to do battle or whatever. There's 4 different suits, 1 through 20 of each suit, and each one of those has a separate ability, and some people are stronger in some than in others, and the higher the numbers go in that suit, the more challenging it is, the more advanced magic. So people in their first year at the academy can generally only use like 1 through 5, but Clara, the main character, is more special, and so she's been able to do inking and casting with only what her mom has taught her, and without going to the academy, and she can use the higher level cards before she ever goes. And once she gets there, she has to hide the fact that she can do higher level stuff without having been taught, because that will reveal that she was doing magic illegally. I maybe should have written notes because I'm going all over the place here. Before I go back to Clara, the third aspect of tarot that I didn't mention yet is the reading. So drawing cards for somebody and like telling their fortune or their future or whatever. Not Clara's strong point. So we start with Clara in jail for committing illegal magic. Her jailer has been forcing her to ink cards for him, also illegally, but you know, corrupt systems and all that. And then after Clara has been there for about a year, the headmaster of Arcana Academy, who's also a prince of the realm, comes and gets her. For whatever his own personal reasons are, he takes her to the school and decides that she is going to go through the academy. Partly it's just so he can keep her near him and use her talents how he chooses. also so she can take the classes and learn to get better at tarot. Clara is technically too old. She's 21. But sometimes nobles get to get a pass and get to go in at the wrong age. And so he's given her this like new noble identity. By the way, I found out the secret thing that you're actually part of this noble family, so we get to sneak you in. So as a fantasy reader and going into what I thought was magic school fantasy, I was excited to like follow her from class to class and see what she was learning and watch her as she grows in her power and discovers more about magic. And while there was a little bit of that was not the main focus of the book or the story. It was like just, I don't know, it was almost like it was just a good setting to put her in, but it wasn't about attending the magic school. When I was first looking at reading this one, it looked like it was going to be something like this illegal magic user gets caught, and as part of her sentencing, she gets sent to magic school, but has to do it secretly. It wasn't so much like that. But the fact that she had been in prison is kept very secret. The prince who oversees the school is the younger brother, and he has jurisdiction over the academy, but his older brother, the crown prince, has jurisdiction outside of the school in the city and is looking for this escaped magic-using convict. And so if that older brother can find proof that Clara is the one who escaped from the school, then he can take her from the younger brother. So that's part of why he needs to keep Clara in the school, is to keep her safe and keep her out of the clutches of his older brother. And then it feels a little like there was supposed to be the feeling of found family, but Clara already has her found family from before she gets sent to prison. And then she never gets super close to anyone at school, which I was a little disappointed by. I felt like her relationships at the academy could have gone so much deeper with helping each other, relying on each other, even like fighting more. It also felt like that was part of the story, but not really what it was about. And then the main thing that, I need to look up his name because I don't remember, Prince Kalis, also headmaster. Prince Kalis has this plan, a plan that he is keeping secret from his father, the king, a plan that he needs Clara for. So he has placed her in the academy to be near him, and they're like enemies. Clara is convinced that Prince Kalis is the reason she was in prison, the reason she got caught. He's just using her and her magical abilities. And so we kind of follow her through her school journey, but also as she goes from classes to go work with Kalis on whatever his plan is. And that also, although a larger part of the plot, the way Kalis wants to use tarot cards in a very specific way and needs Clara to help him, that also didn't necessarily feel like the main point of the story. It was just this thing that Kalis was doing, and Clara has to decide how much she chooses to help him versus help herself. Because once she learns of his plan, she's like, well, that seems like a good plan, but I want to do it for myself instead of letting you do it. And then we have the romance, which again, it is an enemies to lovers, kind of. I have a hard time with that one because starting out as enemies, they're not nice to each other. And it never felt like it was building a romance or romantic tension. It only felt like sexual tension. They would never acknowledge or admit that maybe they were attracted to each other. It was just like this physical need, and the other person is there, and well, we may as well, so why not? And I'm sorry if this is getting a little spoilery. I just want to get into it and talk about it. That was a very slow build. They don't get into anything adult-oriented like that for quite some time. There's only a couple of spicy scenes, and they are not, the whole relationship is not wholesome. It's not very positive. Even as they're learning more about each other and deciding that maybe the other person actually isn't so bad, it's never based on positive relationship traits, and so it's hard to root for that relationship happening. And you know that they're partly faking it for show. You know that they each have their own separate plans that might not really help the other person at the end. And so you're not sure how this can even work out, and do you even get invested in this relationship or not? I tried not to, partly because it just didn't feel like a very positive relationship, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. And again, it didn't feel like the romance part of it was the main point of the story either. It was hard to tell what the main point was. I think maybe the point was just that it was about Clara, the character. Maybe it was supposed to be a more character-driven story, but I think it was too much about what she was doing rather than why she was doing it and how she felt about it. I do think that Kova did a good job of showing, once Clara is here in this situation, how her past life affects her now. Some of her trauma and some of the things that she has been through, like having her dad leave her and her sister and mom, having her mom taken away from them, having to hide, having to never reveal their true last name, having to always be on the run. Once she gets to Arcana Academy, she is very self-sufficient. She's very rough around the edges. She can take care of herself. There were a couple of spots that I did appreciate. A lot of books would have her get into a tough situation and need to be rescued. And there were a couple of places where instead of rescuing her, she is able to get herself out of a situation, or she is so distraught and overreacting that instead of saving her from the thing that's happening to her, she has to be saved from herself going too far. And then there's a good scene where she does get saved, but not by the love interest, and so I think that was better. As far as whether I decide to read the next one or not, I think I'll wait and see how I'm feeling closer to when the next book releases. If the next one had been out, I might have gone straight into it, but having finished it and looking back at it and thinking, what was the point of this book? I don't know that I would take the time to read the next one in this series as opposed to some other book that I'm really looking forward to. But at least I knew that this was the first book in a series before I started it, unlike when I read Shield of Sparrows and thought that was a standalone, and then it wasn't. So if you hear this book being referred to as romantasy, at this point that's just a marketing term. There's a couple of spicy scenes, but I don't know that this is about the romance any more than it's about any of the other stuff. So it was good enough, enjoyable enough. I don't feel like I wasted my time reading it, but I don't know if I'll read the next one or not. So, A Deadly Education. I went into this one not knowing much about it, except that it is magic school and characters die in this one. So again, I was wondering if it would be just like a more mature version of Harry Potter. This was written before Fourth Wing, so it didn't have that influence of let's have adult students who have bedroom scenes. This one is more high school level. So I believe the main character started going when she was 14 and people graduate when they're 18. I think her name is Galadriel, and she's like, yeah, named after who you think I'm named after, but she goes by Elle. The book that I have read and loved by Naomi Novik was His Majesty's Dragon. The two books after that I read by her, I wasn't as excited about or loved quite as much as that first one. I have uprooted on my shelf but haven't started it yet, and I thought I would give this one a try. This one's also on the newer side. I think it came out in 2020, also told from a first-person narrative, but the main character being an angsty teenager meant that it read very immaturely. In her head, the way she speaks just feels so juvenile, but also the way that the school is that it's really dark and creepy and deadly. I do think Novik did a really good job of getting us into Elle's mind at first and having Elle kind of give us the rundown on how the world is and how the school is without making it sound like, and here's the history of this land or whatever. It's technically urban fantasy, it's real world, but with magic and this magic school, kind of like Harry Potter universe. One of the things she said is that only like a quarter of each graduating class makes it through alive. So that is a lot of death. And the death generally happens from really creepy creatures that are drawn to the student's mana source. If I'm not explaining that completely accurately, it's because I only read the first little bit of it. And so as these creatures are drawn into the school and drawn towards the students have to try to keep themselves alive. And then it sounds like at the end of their graduating year, whoever is left alive at that point gets like released to this one last big magical test where they get chased by all the creatures that get released after them or something. Again, didn't read the whole thing. So for me, the mix of juvenile sounding narration while still being really, really creepy was not doing it for me and was not what I wanted to spend my time putting into my brain. And I'm not sure who the target audience is for this book. Probably high schoolers, just because you're in a high schooler's brain and you're following her on her journey through school. And as far as I can tell, there's not sexual adult content, just the like death and dying part. This one's also the first in a trilogy, so if you start this one and enjoy it, there's 2 more. If I were to compare the two, the main difference would be the narration style and age of audience it's intended for, and how much focus is put on the school life aspect. So this one more focused on the school life, whereas this one's not really focused on much of anything. Just following Clara around as she does all the stuff she's doing. So this one I thought was good enough that I will recommend it to people who are looking for a more adult magic school fantasy. This one I didn't think was bad, just not for me. So if you don't mind a story about a younger main character that has a little bit of the creepy vibes, I would go ahead and recommend this one. Maybe it's the perfect one to start in October as Halloween comes up. I don't know. But for me, I'm skipping the rest of it. I will link both of these in the description, as well as my Patreon. Thank you, patrons. I appreciate you guys a lot. And my Instagram. And happy reading. Bye.